Okay. Ooh. All right, let's get into this. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. Tonight's episode is called Aims of Future Generations. How to open up the world. The aims of the future generations, and also the importance of becoming aware of the era of advanced communication. In 2019, I consider we are reaching the end of a sort of linguistic simulation. What does that mean? That means the human being has been living through language for a long time. As it is becoming aware that the body stands in its own design and the mind stands as a sort of designer of the one subjective realms, one subtler planes. Pretty much I'm seeing the evolution of an individually conscious being into greater collective patterns. Either man redefines his own creation, man's creation defines him. The situation is kind of interesting. You know, I consider human civilization to be as if people have recently awoken. And before people, let's even make it simpler and let's say it's eyes. Eyes have opened in an existential landscape. These eyes move through this existential landscape through experiences. Their experience has evolved to a sophistication where it has now become communication. That means you can't just push a person, you can also push a thought into their attention when you speak to them. Right? So it's as if the influence of man has gone from a purely materialistic search and survival game into one where there is more sensitivity to the immaterial, more sensitivity towards sound. Sorry guys, I'm a bit nasally. I gotta take breaks in the middle. What I'm trying to get to is that the human being, these eyes that are open in an existential landscape and moving the body, and as the body moves, the reception moves. So when a person moves to a different environment, they're moving into a different environment of data. Now, when they go into that environment with its various kind of datum, it becomes one of those situations where you can't really stick to your memories. Sometimes I feel what I remember in the moment, very most immediately, is just remnants of the previous moment. Eventually, whatever it is, it has to do with more harmonious kind of movements of the eyes of people. Of course, this talk is dedicated in trying to, at least to some degree, uncover potential patterns that will occur in civilization for the future generations. Something is here, and to become sure of this is the first grand question we ask. Is something here? And if the answer is yes, then arises the second question: what is the intent? What is the expression of energy? Like, what's the point of existence? I find this is a question we should not fear too much. I mean, don't fear a language, because there's worse things than that. The mind is free beyond thought. It's too far to see, so I cannot walk steadily into this idea, but I have certain. Sorry, guys, hopefully I could get through this talk. Here's the idea. Pretty much every person's mind is a handful of sand out of a endless kind of beach that is this human existence. Every person is a unique DNA. The DNA is like a unique container. The container is like a glass, and water is being poured through it as life experience. But this water is endlessly pouring in the waking state, and the human being transitions and navigates. When we wonder about the true influence of the human being, the body of the human being is pretty much can be used to build, it can be used to experience various textures of physicality, but the body's efforts are limited unless it works with the mind. And the mind's effort is more communication. Just like how a person wants to move, their body goes forward. When the mind moves, it scopes over realms of design. Now, these realms of design could appear to the person only just purely words. It can appear as images, it can appear geometrically. It honestly has to do with your ability to conceive and trust. There are many human beings that, some of them trust what they do, and some of them don't. And those who don't, they forget the world easily. When you have to save yourself, you don't have time to even care about your species. The system has to become efficient to a degree where saving yourself is actually saving the whole system. So the solution of the individual should have a collective value. Now, First thing that has to happen, a new ethos, a new narrative. Human beings in the future generations should wake up and realize the freedom they have in regards to telling themselves a new story. That ability to tell yourself a new story means, regardless of the access and the influence you've received from all past designs, everything the past said, you acknowledge those voices, those noises in one room. And when it comes to in some sense, the future, you just prepare for it in the present. There isn't much you can do. We just plant trees that we will not be sitting in their shade. We redesign the roads of the future generations, at least. And what that means is how we use the world will suggest how intelligent we were. If there was this vast array, like we're alone in this cosmos, like many of the planets around us are uninhabited. So it's one of these situations where man is alone as the most superior creature in this universal sector. And as he's studying himself, he's kind of beginning to see that what is the action in the moment? As if like, what is better, selfish extinction or selfless extinction? The situation is, if we're not selfless, the civilization cannot continue. That means if your ancestors threw trash, the ancestors of someone else came and picked that trash up. It's honestly like the vision you have of the kind of world you live in. You know, there has been times where I've looked at this world and I'm like, what is the point? What is the point? It's just atoms moving. It's just mirages of color. But there's been times where I'm like, okay, this could have been completely empty. That means don't act like a nihilist in a world of creation. So what I mean by that is that when you see that something couldn't have been here, but it is, that leads you with a certain state of mind and momentum compared to you feeling like, there's nothing here. It's always easier to break something than build it. Breaking doesn't take much articulation. Pretty much in one movement you can break something. But to build and design something really takes various moments and various influences, you know. It's always harder climbing the mountain than coming down. And similarly, people can have a sort of established way of thought and then totally forget it, you know, kind of break it in an instant, you know. The human being is a space of intelligence that is not fully comprehensible because it moves beyond the language threshold. The language threshold is Mr. Within's idea of kind of saying, there are certain experiences where we don't have words for yet, and we can't have words for. You know, it's another way of saying somebody give a picture to emptiness. It's like, how? What picture you want me to draw of emptiness? The mere intention of action is like, it is an act of existence. I find in the year 2400, something unique is going to happen. And something with a chaotic nature. I feel that there's going to be a sort of, it's like in today's metaphysics, people are like, okay, we're convinced we're natural beings. And let's ask deeper questions. All right, what happened? How'd this world start? You know, how'd this natural world start? I fear in the year 2400, the beings of that era will begin questioning whether they are real, whether they are natural. You see, it's our nature is a gift. This is why we have to protect the sober state, because objective evolution, for a human being at least, has certain limits. You know, that means one of the big mistakes that human civilization can make is to transform a natural world into an unnatural one in a way where the natural being can't know whether it's natural or unnatural. This has to do with more than composition, more than biological chemical composition. This has to do with where all experiments and all results are being brought to. To animate this, I sometimes have called this like a tribe of ideology. So just like you know how I speak about in these talks, as if like you're not alone walking in the street, there's also ideas walking in the street. So similarly, I've also developed a sort of notion that it was a sort of tribal kind of dynamic, right? But of ideology. So certain ideas go together, they are coherent, so they have similar allegiance. You know, as if certain ideologies get along with each other more easier than other ideologies. So what do I mean by that? That means, for example, politics and history. These two ideas are they are required. They're at some point what is being taught from each field is connected. For example, mathematics and geometry. You know, even though we see geometry as part of the mathematical language, but I have too much respect for geometry to just have it be under the banner of mathematics. You know, but what I'm trying to get to is that pretty much objective reality appears as an image. We respond to an image by intersecting it with another image. And that's how we know a thought is there when when an object is being seen. I find that because we are creatures of design, because we have made civilization into a story where we're a character in, this character will always wonder about what it could have done. On some level, the biological purpose, the purpose of existential design, is to just live it, is to just be it. What does that mean? That means your purpose is not to go become Superman. Your purpose is that as a member of the species, you have never been your ancestors have never been this advanced. They have never had this much of a. It's as if when you look at history in accordance to the knowledge the history has accumulated, it's as if the eyes of our species was slowly opening to the world that is here, that was in front of its eyes. Now Mr. Within is saying due to the evolution of language, we can't evolve it further. That means like external evolution of language pretty much means just endlessly create new words, right? So it's a process of creating new words, changing new words, and in some sense certain words leaving the system. In any system, guys, I feel this is so universal. In any active living system, there is a dimension of that intelligence where things have to be projected. It's the expressive intelligence of the moment. There's the moments where things have to be received. When they're being received, that means multidimensional way of reception. It's as if something else, and it's like there's more than one line to be contemplated, more than one dimension to be contemplated. The future generations arise from our vision. It's very fascinating. It's as if our civilization is influenced not by just an action of a person, not only by their communication, but by how far they attempted to see. This is why I find the world celebrates originality, because it's like there is no longer a comparison game. The survival of the animal didn't mean you keep your head in competitive loops. I mean, of course, competition is in a sort of part necessary to the cultural program, but it's like the only reason there's competition is because there is a good and bad in the situation. A very incredible way we can actually think about the title of this episode is that if we had a time machine and we went in the future, let's say when you see this wallpaper, that was kind of my aim. It's kind of like a kid in the school in a futuristic time, do you know? So imagine being, let's say in the next, let's say you can only go 100 years into the future. We go 100 years into the future and we ask a kid, what is your aim? What are you aiming for in life? And what it would be is that probably the mentality of copying the pattern on Earth on other planets. I think ultimately the external vision is like we are doing the same thing a cell does. Just like how a cell copies itself in some sense. Right? Similarly, we're trying to copy the pattern of human civilization on other planets. As we uncover more secrets in the energetic realm, of course, greater technologies bloom. When you find new fields of new ways to acknowledge the universe, the mind has to entertain new design. It's like, I don't know how to say it, it's just like there's a certain way in the moment your attention can stand where there will never be any sort of thing such as, for example, a blockade for creativity. I find that the greatest aim of in any moment in history is to wonder about the veil of the unknown. Is to look at everything and realize the depth of your attention activates greater meaning in phenomena. It's not that the object is the subject, it's that this object is imbued with the subject. So when you get this attitude, it's kind of hilarious because it becomes a very still and silent moment of contemplation. To get to the nit and gritty part of this, it's like, how can I tell you? The same relationship one can have with an object. For example, Buddha said you look at an object and you see an object and you're like, okay, this object is empty. Why is it empty? Because I look at this object and it has a certain meaning for me. It's animated in accordance to my subjective universe. And you look at this object and it's animated in accordance to your subjective universe. So if there are these kind of subjective universes, what that means is the object has no meaning. Matter never meant anything. We ascribe the symbol on the void and called it emptiness. Just the absence of that symbol then becomes emptiness. So what I mean by that is that just like how you see objects are empty, you will one day see that your subjects are like the same emptiness, like somebody else looking at the same subject you're looking at will see a totally different subject in it. So what it means is it's eventually leading back to a responsibility of presence over the personality. So the future generations are going to experience their presence. They're going to experience their presence in collective rhythms. These collective rhythms may seem artificial to them, they will move astray, they will move away from it. If the rhythms feel real to them, they will return to it. I find that there will at some point be an evolutionary return to nature because man is going to get overwhelmed. Technology is going to blow our minds and we're going to be like, oh my God, the wind is too strong and we're pushed back, you know? Interestingly, if we say, I simply wanted to say that we are functioning as individually conscious creatures. We're eventually going to wonder about the other side. As the wonders of the other side come in, narratives are going to start with collective voices. What does that mean? That means the inner archetypes behind people's eyes are going to become very similar to one another. What that means is it's like we, on some level, yes, we do feel our subjective realities are separate, but we're looking at the same external world. So that is an advantage of a unity of inner realms. So what that means is it's like our species, if it's unite, it has the power of 8 billion minds, and each mind harbors their own engagement with the world. I find how civilization will be designed is that we have to acknowledge there's chaos and there's order. So people's reaction to chaos and order makes them have an expectation of the world they're in. Those people in an ordered system accept the ordered system to remain. Those people in a chaotic system, they expect to get out of the chaotic system, right? So what it is it's like this airplane was going, and then it suddenly like this spaceship in space was going. Imagine. Or let me use a better example. This rock in space was moving in space and it suddenly shattered into a bunch of pieces, and each piece of it became like, let's say, this 8 billion people that we are now. So what I'm trying to say is that it's maybe let's take the airplane analogy. Like we were in one plane of existence, ultimate plane of existence. This shattered, fragmented. It's like we're survivors on an island, right? We're survivors on a tiny pebble in the middle of nowhere, spinning around itself in sunlight. Like it doesn't get more strange than that, or strange than that, folks. Like. Like what, it's like you want to hear a horror story, look at existence. It's like, what is this, right? What is this rock hovering, and of course I'm saying that we have so many explanations, but I am asking the question, not looking for an answer. I am asking the question looking for a new question, because answers, they're just simple. They're just like puzzle pieces you're trying to put into your vision of life. If the end, if it fits, it fits. If it doesn't, like, the will continues. Man's free will and his awareness of this freedom to be an expression, makes him kind of like, think of it this way, it's all mental training. It's as if minds are too shy to still be present, so they're moving as bodies. Eventually, there will be what I call the attributeless relationships of self. You will have a relationship with yourself which has no image, word, sound, quality. It's just there. It's just existence doing the best that it can. I have painted this narrative of pretty much the arrival of advanced communicators. What I mean by that is that I noticed a phenomena occurring where, as the human being wonders more about what it truly is, it reaches a point where it will see that its meaning is inseparable from the world that it is, as if man realizes we're not, it's like your values are also made from the world. Just like you have an elemental existence, a lot of your ideological processes, you can say, or various ways that idea is processed to you, like food that's consumed. So it's like the way that you make an idea your own, many of those ideas are also from nature. It is, to be honest, silence is the weird thing. Space is the X factor in the equation. Ancient traditions, they saw space as an element. They're like, all right, it's the element of space. What you gonna do, you know? And so there was a situation where now we don't consider space the element, but space the container of the elements. Another way of saying that is like the empty piece of paper was real in ancient times, in the sense that that emptiness, the universe could have potentially been just pure emptiness and then the manifestation of a certain design. Or emptiness could have already been a created design, which eventually, eventually you reach a certain viewpoint. I find that you're regressing so back towards the cause of the effect that you think you are now, where the cause dismantles and you realize only the moment now is accessible. An advanced communicator is a human being that realizes their intelligence because it's natural, is also the advanced communication of the universal sector. You immediately leap out of the ideological perspective. You realize ideas can be used. Ideas are, I say, use language as a tool. You know, in some sense, language is advanced technology. You know, language is not for everybody. Not everybody. How can I tell you? Language is, not everybody should drive. Similarly, not everybody should truly get lost in language, you know? That's very important. Languages can possess you. There was this poet named Hafez. He would say, the words you speak become the house you live in. So what does that mean? That means the attention of the moment goes towards a subjective framework, and because the attention has remained on that subjective framework for so long, it begins to define the inner environment. This is why life is so designed in a blessed way to be balanced, that in the darkest hour, like hands reach to assist. So that's why I consider it's like, you know, there's certain perspectives that you can see the cosmos as a whole body too. This sort of cosmic codependent movement, as if the micro cannot exist without the macro cannot be acknowledged without the micro. So the multidimensionality of life just shows where we are, but because the system's too dynamic and we pilot our attention and we move throughout the day, it's as if, like, on some level, no photo on the wall can define it. That means we are creatures that may have beliefs and disbeliefs, but it doesn't, it's a show. It's the best tool found in the moment. And to be honest, there's pretty much two ways you can walk on this world. You can live as a body, howling your brain around with a mind so unknown that you don't even care about it. Or you can, in some sense, move as a mind. that is conscious. The moment your eyes open, as if get ready, life has begun. And when I say get ready, that means rather than a person trying to escape a situation, you have to learn to listen to how the moment speaks. When I say how the moment speaks, that means your intuition of how the moment is moving. There's been times where it's like I've just been simply just standing, and then there came this feeling as if my whole moment moved, as if like something within. It's like my, I don't know how to say it. Imagine a giant sphere around me. Imagine this giant sphere moving somewhere else, and I'm still in the room, and I'm like, all right, later, guys, I gotta go. And it was just this feeling that I felt I had to continue on. Sometimes trust means there's certain things you will leave behind when you trust yourself, and what you leave behind is the expectations of others. That comes with the task of communication. You're sacrificing the other dimensions that could have had an opportunity cost of being communicated. So for some people, sometimes there isn't enough for words. For some people, there's too many. I find it strange. I find it something was taken away. Our species seems like it was much more advanced, but then something happened. So I feel that it was as if the mind of a higher being fell into how can I tell you, a world of a lesser being. That's to be very poetic about it. I honestly don't know how far a species would go. And I don't know how far language is going to play a role in it. I don't know if we're going to take ourselves to the edge and freak out, or before extinction arrives, we have in some sense provided our eternal legacy to the cosmos. And pretty much the battle is this, guys, that our species is fighting so hard not to just say to protect the future generations. Our species is fighting so hard so before the lights go out, it saw something of itself. It's kind of like this whole species is saying, just see me. That's the effort of civilizations, the continuity of the pattern, the ability to, in some sense, identify with the environment in certain moments and then navigate out of those environments and identify with various textures. It's as if ideology could be said to be sometimes be like the weather. Ideas come and go, emotions come and go. Sometimes you enter a room and a person is saying something so profound that it's as if their emotions influence your emotions. And you can say again, that's an experience of an emotion coming out of nowhere again. Right? So it's as if the world is alive too because life has moved in it. It's kind of saying that the way the ego updates is kind of like if like in one of my science fiction novels, this robot has a discussion with this enlightened guy, and then this kind of very liberated guy, this wise guy, tells the robot, listen, man, I know you don't have a soul, but at least you can copy the patterns of those who did to at least experience what it would be like. And the robot's kind of like has to reset its intelligence, And so what I'm trying to say is it's kind of similar with the ego. That means if I ask you right now, can you put the ego in front of me on the table? Just just anybody who feels they have an ego right now, just take out your ego and put it on the table. And you'll see that, wait a minute, the ego is an abstraction. How can I put it on a table? Do you see what I mean? The true responsibility of inner realms means to become so sensitive to every micro movement of our subjective character. That means at some point, you can't hold up. It has to do with the movement of thought. And if thought really moves fast, it changes the shape of the whole simulation. So right now, imagine I'm saying, all right, guys, I'm this character. My online alias, my real name is Amin, but my online alias is, let's say, Mr. Within or whatever, right? So I'm this character, and then I say the story of the world, the history of the world, and there comes the kind of character inside a story. Now from this story, from this terrace, I'm looking out and wondering what else is there to be done. And all I've come down to the conclusion, like, I don't know how to say it, like, but my final conclusion is that we have to explore the unconscious, our inner dimensions. And so I find the future generations will realize there's some questions that have to break in order for new questions to bring about answers that would be answers to those past questions. To satisfy the personal dimensions of one's being, to experience the personhood fully. Then, to experience one's impersonal dimensions, which means once you have acknowledged what has started, you're willing to see it change. Once you have acknowledged that which has changed, you, in a sense, have, in a micro way, acknowledged what is the exit of the system, what is the end. And so when you become conscious of your end, the beginning is given full freedom. When you realize every day happens once, how important are the judgments of temporary beings? It's as if our eternity is only there because we accept our temporality, not because we deny it. We only have an ability to wonder about the eternal if we have acknowledged we're temporary. So because we acknowledge we're temporary, wonder about the eternal, and then the eternal through abstraction maybe animates to some people. For me, my relationship with the subjective realm is pretty much a sort of attributeless observer, a sort of simple attention that's just understood this simplicity has been there from the start. So then complexity manifests as waves on the surface of an ocean. So for me, it's like if you make the world too complex, do you know what kind of burden that would be? That would be kind of like Atlas from Greek mythology being like, hey man, you want to hold this? I find that there are worlds that we have access to, the known component to our reality where knowledge arises from. Whatever you don't know, it's like it's that you can't know. What I mean by that is like the design's not being acknowledged. And then in regards to the unknown, pretty much we're left in a endless attempt situation and see what there is. Attempt and see how it occurs. Exert the effort and see where the effort leads. If it leads to a sort of efficiency, continue it. If it leads to inefficiency, then it's like the opportunity cost of a new effort could be more profound, a new direction, a new intention. Because it's kind of fascinating. People don't, like, if I tell you just pick up an object in around where you are, you instantly pick it up. But if I tell you now go achieve all your dreams, you'll be like, whoa, 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 whoa. It's not, I can't do it at this instantly, but you see you can. It's just your relationship with ideology. As if, to be honest, it's like we are creatures of a sort of passage of experience into higher levels of that experience. I find. What does that mean? That means the peasant wants to be the king, but the king doesn't want to be the king. The king has experienced being a king. So life moves on into upon confrontation. Once you confront the day, the night becomes your lesson. So anyways, guys, I feel maybe it's okay to end the talk soon. I find we are in an aftermath of the Tower of Babylon, where man was building a tower towards the heavens, and the gods kind of made man speak different languages. They were united under one language, and so it's like we're in that kind of fragmented aftermath. So the future generations are most likely going to deal with the unification and globalization. So what that means is like every nation is expanding, but realizing that what's occurring is that the mind, the ideals, the members of nations are shifting. And so what that means is really it's the human being that's giving value to the land. So an integration of various systems of value, which means transformation of primitive savage archetypes into more, I find, modern, efficient, and intelligent ones. So it's kind of like man's like, whoa, a machine is updating. Can I update myself? And that update really occurs with man becoming responsible of the free will. Maybe something that hasn't been said to you. That something incredible happens when you accept your life and live it. Like the whole creativity even redefines, I think. So anyways, guys, I hope this talk was helpful. Remember, silence, as Sri Ramana Maharshi says, silence is also a conversation. I think that's a polite way of telling someone not to speak. Probably one of his disciples was loud. But anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. Much blessings and namaste.